2026. Global markets are in absolute free fall today. The Dow Jones at one point down over 1,000 points as there are massive sell-offs in what is quickly becoming a destabilizing Middle East conflict. What was initially touted as a quick in and out military operation appears to be headed towards, well, abject chaos. There is no plan for Iran, and we are going to start seeing the cost of that. Of course, we have already seen the military cost of this, both in money, dollars, freedom, unnecessary deaths, and of course, the loss of at least 6 servicemen and women. Of course, if you are a millennial, Gen X, a lot of these things are beginning to make sense. A lot of these things sound familiar. This is not the first time, of course, that we have been dragged into a military conflict in the Middle East. But it does appear that the planning, strategy, and operational capacity of the United States military, well, let's just say it. This is not George Bush's military. This is not Rumsfeld's military. This is a military operation being run by an alcoholic and an administration of clown car. And we're starting to see the chaos of that. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ignition News. Let me start out. Let me lighten the mood a little bit. I know I'm trying to keep a balance of truth, objective reality, facts, all that stuff. How's everybody doing today? Hi, I do need to remind you, we are streaming live right now on, let's see what we got. We got YouTube, Twitch, Substack, TikTok, and occasionally we have Instagram. But let's talk about what happened today in history. Today is Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. In 1845, Florida became the 27th state, and it has been fucking causing problems for us ever since. In 1931, President Herbert Hoover signed the law, making the Star-Spangled Banner the official national anthem. What else? In 1973, the International Treaty on Endangered Species was signed. The birth of Time magazine in 1923. And in 1972, if you're a space nerd like me, I love outer space, we launched the Pioneer 10. Pretty cool. Good stuff. Welcome. It's good to have you. Sorry, I got a little nostalgic about outer space. Sometimes I wish I could live in outer space. Anyways, welcome to the Ignition News. We're your number one source here for unbiased, unfiltered news without the amygdala hijack. We like to take the top 4 or 5 stories, let you know how that's relevant to you, standing up for it, protecting your democracy and your community. If you're watching us, we are on Substack, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. So let's get into the stories today. All right, here we go. Obviously, we know on Saturday morning, the United States launched a joint military operation against the country of Iran. I keep getting criticism about how I pronounce it. Iran is apparently the correct way to pronounce it. I'm from the Midwest, and so I'm very used to saying Iran. The operation is called Operation Epic Fury, and that should tell you everything you need to know about the mentality behind this. We already know that the strikes have killed Iran's supreme leader. And only 27% of Americans support action in Iran. By the way, those 27%, can't wait to see them signing up to go get drafted, to go to Iran. I can't say it. Iran. Help me out here if I get it right. I'm so sorry. What is it? Oh, I got another warning on TikTok. Share responsibly on live. Confirm sources before sharing and engaging with content. I love this. Here's what you need to understand about this action in Iran. Yes, I did it right. Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution gives Congress, and Congress alone, the power to declare war. This is not an interpretation. This is just hard, cold text. It's not a talking point from a leftist. The plain text of the Constitution is very clear. The president did not ask Congress. Trump did not go to Congress first. Trump submitted a war powers resolution notification after the bombs were already falling, which is not the same thing as getting authorization. The War Powers Resolution requires the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of committing troops to hostilities. It does not grant the president the right to start war and tell Congress later. And to be very clear, the president called it a war in his speech announcing his war. And a lot of people are starting to call for what is the only reasonable solution to all of this. The president of the United States did the most illegal thing a president can do, which is to declare war without Congress, and he needs to be impeached. It's not just progressive leftists calling for this, by the way. You've got Jeff Merkley of Oregon. He's a member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Obviously, Ro Khanna. Thomas Massie described the attack as an unauthorized war, and he's leading efforts by Congress to pass the War Powers Resolution. Tim Kaine and Rand Paul have co-sponsored a similar request in the Senate. So really what they're asking for is quite simple. They're just asking to say, hey, let us go on record. And the thing that I would tell you about this war is, in spite of what your politicians would say, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, they have no issue with this conflict in Iran. Oh, I did it. Right. See, I'm getting better. They have no issue with this conflict in Iran. They just want to vote for this conflict. They just want to say that they have voted for this conflict. But therein lies the critical hypocrisy. Because if there was going to be a war powers resolution, if there was going to be an authorization by Congress, there should already have been an authorization by Congress. Everyone in this conflict is playing the most, how would I say this? Everyone involved in this, from the administration to Congress to even your local elected officials, they are taking the path of least accountability. The president is launching military operations, calling it a war, and then his cabinet is calling it military activities. Congress is saying he can't do this without approval, but they're not having a fucking vote. Everybody's trying to say they're doing something, but everybody's doing nothing. Meanwhile, this conflict is going to go on and on and on. Yesterday, we lost 3 F-15s, 3 F-15Es. Depending on who you ask, those planes cost between $30 million and $100 million. They were shot over Kuwait by friendly fire. This operation is being run by an alcoholic. This is what happens to the men and women in the armed forces. Our planes get shot down by allies. The only option here is to impeach the president. The president is engaged in a legal war. People are dying. Over 160 girls at a daycare died. This is an illegal act of aggression. We are committing war crimes with your tax dollars, and the only option is impeachment. Now, in spite of reporting that I provided yesterday, I do want to tell you what the president is saying about all this. Let's talk about what he said last night. On Truth Social on Monday night, the president wrote the United States munitions stockpiles have never been higher and that the country has a, quote, virtually unlimited supply of medium-grade weapons. Then he wrote, wars can be fought forever and very successfully using just these supplies. He called the operation on track, projected it to last 4 to 5 weeks, and added, whatever it takes. So let us remember today. Today is March 3rd. The president said that it should last 4 to 5 weeks. So when we are here in 4 to 5 months or 4 to 5 years, let us remember what the orange buffoon said about this conflict. But there's a reason that he's saying this. At the same time that the president is saying they have virtually unlimited supplies to weaponry, we actually know that the United States is actually running out, as are all of our allies in the Middle East. We are running out of interceptor missiles. Iran's primary capability, offensive capability, is medium-range ballistic missiles. We use interceptor missiles to go up in the sky and intercept them. Then you have, for example, Israel's Iron Dome. The reality is, in June, we went through 150 of our interceptor missiles defending Israel from these missiles coming from Iran after the 12-day war. We used a quarter of our stockpile of interceptors. We are running out of interceptors. We will be out of interceptors in a matter of days. And one of the reasons for this is that every time we go on a defensive capability with a missile, say a missile from Iran or a drone from Iran, we have to use 2 to 3 of these interceptors because you can't take a chance. So you have to use 2 of them. They're very high tech and they're also very expensive, but we are also running out. In 2025, we only ordered 11 interceptors. This year alone, we've ordered 12. We used 150 in 12 days in June. We are going to run out of interceptors. Obviously, the president, he dismisses this. He's telling everyone that we can fight this war forever. Military analysts are saying high-end stockpiles do have real limitations, and we are firing these interceptors faster than they can make them. And I think this is something where Congress needs to step up. But the reality is the easiest way to solve this problem is to stop being in the middle of a fucking war in the Middle East. The No New Wars president, of course, now has engaged in 7 or 8, depending on who you ask, military conflicts, an illegal, unconstitutional war, and he is putting your life in danger and the troops' life in danger and everyone in the region's life in danger because Benjamin Netanyahu flew over 2 weeks ago and told him to strike Iran. We're being run by our military is run by someone who whose main policy seems to be doing his hair in the morning. Seems to spend more time shellacking and lacquering his hair in the morning than he does making actual military strategy. And when he does make military strategy, he leaks it on Signal to reporters. This has the potential to be a disaster in the Middle East on a scale that we have never seen. Do you think Iran is going to stop lobbing missiles towards Israel once we run out of interceptors? Do you think Iran is going to say, oh, the Iron Dome has depleted its supply of defensive capability? I guess it's mission accomplished. What happens at that point, if we run out of interceptors, we can't predict, but I can tell you that I think the president gets more aggressive. I think the president uses more and more advanced weaponry that capable of causing much more damage to human life. And this is the thing about empire. They want you to say, oh, you're against this, so you support Iran? You support Iran? You with the bad guys? Well, there are 6 families at least. There's probably more, unfortunately. There are 6 families at least that are asking themselves that question. Why did their son, why did their daughter die in a military conflict? For what purpose? I'm just going to ask that question. What is the purpose, the reason that those soldiers are dead? I want to take a quick break to let you know that our show is sponsored by Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. It's a signature podcast with 14 episodes and 4 bonus episodes. If you're wondering how to fight fascism in America, how to run for a political office, or how to get more involved in your community, go download Ignite. It's a totally free podcast. There's 14 episodes. It's your signature guide on how to fight fascism, and it is the sponsor of our show today. So let's get into, speaking of action, let's get into what Minnesota's doing. We've obviously talked about Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota, and there's a pretty big development today. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty announced yesterday that her office is formally investigating 17 cases of potential misconduct by federal immigration officers during the crackdown in the Minneapolis areas. In Minnesota, the cases Moriarty is now reviewing, including Greg Bovino, throwing that canister of smoke at protesters on, January 21st? Another thing that's being investigated is federal officers deploying chemical irritants outside of a high school, officers smashing car windows, throwing people to the ground, and detaining people who were doing nothing more than blowing whistles and recording arrests on public streets. Of course, you know that Bovino was basically removed from Minneapolis after what happened with Renee Good and Alex Preddy. We still don't really understand the nature of those investigations at the federal level. But now what we do know is that the fight continues in Minnesota. And Minnesota is a really good blueprint of what effective resistance can look like. Although obviously I think we can do more. The fact that the state officials are refusing to buy the narrative that nothing can be done is an excellent sign. And it matters a lot more than just what happened to Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And it does absolutely matter that they are held, those people are held accountable for what they did. It matters because one of the first places where local government is drawing a hard legal line is saying federal authorization does not have ultimate power. Power has limits. One of the things that I would remind you before I close the story is that there's currently this showdown happening in Congress over body cameras and masks for ICE officers, right? That's the Democratic demand. Body cameras, masks. Masks off, cameras on. That's what they're saying. Chuck Schumer. Masks off, cameras on. Chuck Schumer, who just incidentally, I would remind you, is doing nothing about the war in Iran. See, I'm getting better. I'm learning as I go. It's stuck in my brain as Iran. It just is. I'm sorry. Working on it. Chuck Schumer, who has not done anything to stop the war in Iran, I will remind you that not just 2 weeks ago, he said that one of his main jobs was to secure all of the aid that Israel needs. Interesting. Let's move on to segment 4. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy. We have a nice crowd over here on TikTok. I appreciate you. I don't know why, but the warning went away on TikTok. I think that's kind of weird. Every time we stream now on TikTok, there's a banner that pops on the screen. I'm reading factual information from the news, and TikTok tells the audience over on TikTok that they should check their sources. I'm a primary source. Anyways, This is a good time to remind you to please go follow the show on your favorite podcast platform, whether that is YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever that is for you. We've grown our audience on Apple Podcasts a ton. Thank you for the Apple Podcast crew. Thank you for everyone who leaves a little note over there. I appreciate it. Leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe if you can. I appreciate it a lot. Let's get into the last story because I actually think it's kind of exciting to hear about. Let's talk about what's happening today. Today's March 3rd, obviously. It is the Democratic primary in Texas. So you've got Tallarico and you've got Crockett. This is going to decide what the future of the Democratic Party is going to look like. Both candidates are quote unquote progressive. Both are obviously rising stars in the Democratic Party, and both of them want to flip this Republican seat. Obviously, Jasmine Crockett is a civil rights attorney, former public defender, and her congressional seat was gerrymandered out. Tallarico is a former teacher turned seminary student who has built a campaign around progressive Christianity and what he calls a politics of love over fear. So it's really, it's really undecided right now. It's 50-50 in the polls. Both of these things can be true simultaneously. Crockett and Tallarico can both be really good candidates, but we have to understand that what happens in Texas is going to be a sign, something we have to pay attention to. Tallarico obviously went viral for this situation where he was being interviewed by Colbert. The network said that he could not, that they could not air it. And so they put it on YouTube and it got seen by something like 10 times the normal audience size. So it's a showdown in Texas today. But before I close that out, I want to talk to you about something that I think is important, and that is the poly market. I promise this is not an ad for the poly market. So I told you that the polls in Texas are pretty much dead even at this point. In fact, let's go ahead and look it up. Let's look up Texas Senate polls. Let's take a look. Texas Senate primary polls. What do we got here? Razor thin polls tighten in the state. Here's what we got. Okay, so you've got 49% to 47%. Yeah. James Tallarico slightly ahead in the latest poll. RCP, Real Clear Politics. So right now, according to the polling, it's just really neck and neck within the margin of error. On Polymarket, it's much different. The Polymarket poll is 75%. 75% for Tallarico versus 25% for Jasmine Crockett. This is a huge deal, and it's something that we really need to talk about. Polymarket, if you're not familiar, is one of many prediction markets. Prediction markets are, how do you describe a prediction market? It's really essentially just a pool of money where people are betting on the outcome of something. It's not quite gambling. It's not quite investing, but it is a form of that. And so, for example, you bid into this pool of money to determine who's going to win the election. And right now, the poly market is 75% Tallarico to 25% Crockett. So one thing I would tell you is poly markets have been quite reliable in predicting elections lately, but that is actually the point that concerns me. Because when you have a prediction market where you can literally bet money on a candidate, right? And let's say you live in Texas. Well, you're financially incentivized to vote for the person that you said is going to win your poly market bet. And worse, let's say you have $1 million to spend if you're an outsider and you want, let's just say you want Jasmine Crockett to be the Senate candidate, right? Or you want James, either one, James Tallarico, either one. Let's say you want either one of those people to be the candidate. Well, you could spend $1 million on TV ads and you're not going to move the needle at all. Or you could go put $1 million on Jasmine Crockett in a poly market. And then everybody that participates in poly market, and especially people who participate in poly markets in Texas, look at that and go, oh my God, it's 75% for this candidate and there's $1 million in the pool. Obviously, there's some reason that people think that this candidate is going to win the election. It's for that reason that poly markets are a dangerous thing to democracy in the United States of America. I have no problem with predicting what color tie that, Stephen Colbert is going to wear on his show that night, even though those things can be manipulated. But using poly markets in our elections or poly market and prediction markets in our elections is not good for democracy. And we have to ensure that before we get to the presidential election of 2028, that poly markets and prediction markets are not part of the election cycle. It creates an incentive for corruption. It creates an incentive for unfair influence, and it creates an incentive for someone to literally vote against their own well-being because of their financial well-being. And that's something no one should ever do, or no one should ever have to do in the United States of America. So, how do all of these things tie together on March 3rd? Let's bring them all together. So, you've got really the same line of conversation in four different stories. This is a conversation about a government that thinks it has unlimited power, unlimited authority to start a war without Congress, unlimited immunity for officers who kill people in the streets, a president who lies and says he has unlimited weapon supply, and the confidence to say all of that out loud without any specific concern. None of this has clean answers today. None of this has an easy path to success. But what we do know is that every day, in spite of massive attempts to make us feel otherwise, that we continue to show up with optimism, hope, and a little bit of, if I were to steal a word from the president, a little bit of fury. I think what we're seeing across this country, especially as we head into the midterms, is we see people who are actively engaged and getting involved at the local level in ways that we have never seen before. Every day, every single day, I meet with, I connect, and I get a chance to see people who have never been involved in politics before finally waking up and finally participating. We are never going to change this and fundamentally change the power structure if nobody believes that we ever can. But that's the thing. I believe that we can. There's a huge problem with money in politics. There's a huge problem with corruption and outside foreign influence in our political structure. But one of the biggest problems is actually not those two things. The biggest problem is that we have given up on the power of effective local organizing. One of the reasons that's happened is because these tech companies have really turned our brains into mush with social media, algorithms, and shortening our attention spans. It's tough. It's tough to have a half-hour news show when people are used to getting all of their information in 15 to 30-second screen videos. It's tough. But truly wrestling power at your local level, being unafraid to organize at a local level, understanding that organizing only has to mean I'm going to make sure that 3 people vote, 2 people from my office and 1 neighbor. You have turned your vote from 1 person into 4 people. If 100 people do that, that is 100 people turning their vote into 400 votes. There are many races across the country that are decided by less than 400 votes. So if you believe that you can't do anything, you've already given up. But I believe you can. I believe we can. And I believe once we start to explain the power of organizing, not just what it is. Yeah, Kodak. Yeah. Not just what it is, but how to do it. Well, we're unstoppable, just like my dog says. That's the Ignition News for March 3rd, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you back tomorrow. Yeah.